5 years ago, my sister stole my fiancé, a successful businessman with whom I was already selecting a wedding date. Today, at my father's funeral, she arrived with him, adorned in diamonds, a smirk on her face. "Poor you," she said, "still alone, while I'm swimming in luxury." I calmly replied, "Allow me to introduce my husband." When she saw him, she was speechless, for my husband turned out to be... Natalia and Maxim sat on an old park bench, strewn with autumn leaves. The wind played in their hair, and the sun, filtering through the tree branches, cast whimsical shadows on the ground. They were discussing their wedding date, sifting through options like precious gems. August seemed too hot, September too rainy, and October already too cold. "Perhaps late July," Natalia suggested, leaning into Maxim. "It will still be warm then, and we'll have time for a seaside honeymoon." Maxim embraced her, kissing her temple. "As you wish, my love. The most important thing is that you are by my side." They dreamt of a home, children, shared travels, a long and happy life filled with love and understanding. Everything seemed so simple, so clear, so unshakable. But life, as we know, loves to make its own adjustments, and often these adjustments are cruel and unexpected. Inga, Natalia's elder sister, had always been like a shadow, lurking in the background. She envied Natalia's beauty and intelligence, her easy way with people, her ability to connect with anyone. Inga felt invisible, insignificant, like a minor character in someone else's play. When Natalia announced her engagement to Maxim, Inga experienced a surge of intense, burning envy. Maxim was handsome, intelligent, and promising. He was everything Inga had always desired but could never attain, and now he was destined for her younger sister. Inga subtly began to get closer to Maxim, finding excuses to meet and talk. She showed interest in his work, his hobbies, his thoughts. She knew how to listen, how to sympathize, how to create an illusion of understanding and closeness. Maxim, blinded by the attention and compliments, gradually began to fall under her spell. He saw in Inga what he felt was lacking in Natalia: maturity, experience, depth. He failed to notice that Inga was weaving a web of lies and manipulation around him, striving to isolate him from Natalia. It all happened very quickly. One day, Maxim simply vanished. He didn't call, didn't write, left no explanation. Natalia tried to reach him, but he wouldn't answer her calls. She went to his home, but no one opened the door. Weeks later, she accidentally saw him in the city. He was walking arm in arm with Inga, smiling and talking animatedly about something. They looked happy and carefree, as if nothing else had ever existed between them. Natalia froze, as if struck by lightning. She couldn't believe her eyes. The man she loved, her fiancé, her future husband, was walking with her sister as if they had always been together. The world around her dimmed, sounds faded, and she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She stood paralyzed, unable to utter a word or take a step. Maxim noticed her, his face contorted with guilt and confusion. He tried to say something, but Inga squeezed his hand tightly, preventing him from speaking. She looked at Natalia with disdain and malicious glee, as if she had won some cruel game. Her eyes conveyed, "He's mine now. You lost." Natalia didn't make a scene. She didn't scream, cry, or beg. She simply turned and walked away, leaving Maxim and Inga standing in the middle of the street like two mannequins frozen in an unnatural pose. She endured the betrayal of her sister and fiancé in silence, without drama or confrontation. She didn't understand why it happened, what she had done wrong, or how she deserved such treatment. But there were no answers. There was only pain, resentment, and disappointment. Shortly thereafter, it became known that Inga and Maxim had married. The wedding was lavish and ostentatious, attended by society's elite. Photographs from the celebration splashed across glossy magazines, showcasing the newlyweds' glamorous life. They traveled the world, bought expensive things, attended social events. They appeared to be the perfect couple, happy and successful. Natalia looked at these photos and felt anger boiling in her heart. She hated Inga for her betrayal, hated Maxim for his weakness, hated this whole world of lies and hypocrisy. But she understood that hatred is a destructive force that poisons the soul and prevents one from moving forward. She didn't want to let hatred consume her. She wanted to break free from this vicious cycle and start a new life, and she decided to leave, to go far away, to a place where no one knew her, where she could forget the past and start with a clean slate. She understood it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for the challenges. She knew she had the strength to overcome any adversity. She packed her belongings, said goodbye to her friends, and left the city, leaving behind everything she held dear. She didn't know what awaited her, but she believed she could find her place in life and achieve happiness. Natalia rode the train, gazing out the window at the passing landscapes, feeling her heart gradually fill with hope. She knew that life went on and that she had a chance to start over, and she decided to seize that chance. She resolved to become strong, independent, and happy. She decided to prove to herself and the world that she was capable of more than just being abandoned and betrayed. In a new city, nestled amidst forests and lakes, Natalia found work in a regular city hospital. It was difficult at first, sleepless nights, constant thoughts of betrayal, tormenting her soul. But gradually, step by step, she began to return to life. Work became her salvation. She threw herself into medicine, dedicating all her time to her patients. The oncology department was particularly challenging, witnessing people suffering, fighting for their lives, offering hope. All of this required immense strength and emotional dedication, but it was here, amidst pain and despair, that Natalia found a new meaning in life. She realized that her calling was to help others, alleviate their suffering, and give them hope for recovery. Natalia worked hard, constantly learning, attending conferences and seminars. She strived to become the best doctor, to help her patients as effectively as possible. Her diligence and talent did not go unnoticed. Soon, she became one of the leading oncologists in the city. In addition to her hospital work, Natalia was actively involved in volunteering. She helped orphanages, shelters for homeless animals, and participated in charitable events. She wanted to share her warmth and care with those who needed it most. One day, at a charity forum dedicated to oncology issues, Natalia met Oleg. He was a renowned physician, a professor, and the head of a large medical center. Oleg impressed as an intelligent, calm, and very kind person. He had been involved in charity work for many years, assisting hospitals and research institutes. Oleg immediately noticed Natalia. He was struck by her knowledge, her dedication to her profession, her genuine empathy for her patients. He saw in her not only a talented doctor, but also a wonderful person with a big heart. They began to communicate, spend time together, discuss medical issues, share experiences, and simply walk around the city. Natalia felt at ease and comfortable with Oleg. He knew how to listen, understand, and support. With him, she forgot about the past, about pain and resentment. Oleg was older than Natalia, but it didn't hinder their relationship. On the contrary, his life experience and wisdom helped her make the right decisions, see the world more broadly, and find more good in it. A year after they met, Oleg proposed to Natalia. She thought long and hard before accepting. The fear of repeating her past mistakes still lingered in her soul. But Oleg managed to dispel her doubts. He proved to her that he was worthy of her love and trust. Natalia and Oleg had a quiet wedding, surrounded by their closest friends and colleagues. They didn't want a lavish celebration or to attract attention. Their happiness was quiet and serene, like a forest stream. After the wedding, Natalia and Oleg began living together. Their home was filled with love and understanding. They supported each other in everything. They worked together, rested together, did charity work together. Natalia was happy. She had found her calling, met the love of her life, and built a family. It seemed that the past was far behind and would never remind her of itself again. She tried not to think about her hometown, her sister, or her ex-fiancé. She erased them from her life as if they had never existed, but fate had other plans. One day, Natalia received a call from her hometown informing her of her father's death. She had to return to say goodbye. The news of her father's death shocked Natalia. Despite not having spoken for many years, She had always loved him. He was a kind and just man, and she deeply regretted not having had the chance to ask for his forgiveness for leaving. Natalia understood that she would have to face Inga and Maxim. The thought of it caused her discomfort. She didn't know how she would behave when she met them, if she could control her emotions. Oleg supported Natalia through this difficult time. He understood how hard it would be for her to return to her hometown and encounter the people who had caused her so much pain. He promised to be by her side and help her through it. Together, they traveled to Natalia's hometown. She tried not to dwell on the upcoming encounter, focusing instead on her memories of her father, but the closer they got to the city, the more her anxiety grew. Natalia remained silent the entire way, staring out the window. Oleg held her hand, trying to offer support. He felt her tension and knew how difficult it was for her right now. Natalia returned to her hometown as if sinking into a thick fog of memories. 5 years of silence, 5 years of life erased from the memory of this place, now compressed into one heavy moment. Her father's funeral was unusually gray, as if the sky itself was weeping for the loss. Faces seemed frozen in masks of grief, but Natalia felt curiosity and unspoken questions hidden behind those masks. Inga appeared, arm in arm with Maxim, as if stepping out of a glossy magazine cover. A luxurious coat, diamonds sparkling even in the dim light. Everything screamed prosperity. Maxim looked gaunt. His eyes held a weariness that his expensive suits couldn't hide, along with a meticulously shaved stubble. They approached Natalia like predators assessing their prey. Inga stopped in front of Natalia. Her gaze was full of disdain and malicious glee. She scanned her sister's modest mourning dress as if measuring her poverty. "Poor you, Natasha," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Still alone. And I'm swimming in luxury. Maxim provides me with everything I could ever dream of." Inga demonstratively pressed against her husband, as if showing whom he belonged to. Natalia felt the old pain surge from the depths of her soul, but she suppressed it. She had learned to control her emotions, not to let them overwhelm her. There was no anger or resentment in her eyes, only calm and a faint sadness. She smiled at Inga. The smile was restrained, but it exuded inner strength. "Inga," Natalia replied calmly, "I'm happy for your well-being, but happiness isn't measured by the number of diamonds." She paused, as if gathering her thoughts. "Allow me to introduce my husband." At that moment, Oleg entered the hall. He walked with a confident stride. His face expressed sorrow, yet it radiated warmth and kindness. Oleg was dressed in a smart suit, but his intelligence and inner strength were unmistakable. He was a tall, imposing man with a penetrating gaze and a gentle smile. All present froze, as if doused with ice water. Silence fell in the hall, broken only by hushed whispers. Many recognized Oleg, the renowned doctor, professor, and philanthropist whose name graced newspaper pages and television screens. He was known for his charitable projects, his assistance to the sick, and his scientific achievements. Inga lost her ability to speak. Her face contorted with surprise and anger. She hadn't anticipated such a turn of events. Her bravado vanished instantly, as if it had never existed. She looked at Oleg as if he were a ghost, unable to believe her eyes. Maxim turned pale. He recognized Oleg, the same influential man who had refused to cooperate with his foundation. He had tried to reach him through mutual acquaintances, offered favorable terms, but Oleg remained steadfast. Maxim understood that Oleg could have been the key to solving his financial problems, but now that opportunity seemed lost forever. Oleg approached Natalia and gently placed his arm around her shoulders. His gaze held love and support. "I sympathize with your loss, my dear," he whispered in her ear. Natalia pressed against her husband, feeling his warmth and protection. She looked at Inga and Maxim, and her eyes held no schadenfreude or triumph. She simply wanted them to understand. She was happy, despite everything. Oleg extended his hand to Maxim. "My condolences," he said with restraint. "Your father-in-law was a respected man." Maxim shook Oleg's hand, feeling awkward and humiliated. He understood that Oleg knew about his past, but wasn't showing it. This was even more humiliating than an open reproach. Natalia took Oleg's hand and moved towards her father's coffin. She wanted to say goodbye in peace and quiet. She thanked him for everything he had done for her, for his love and support. She promised him that she would be happy and would help others. Inga was speechless. All her ostentatious confidence, painstakingly built over years, crumbled like a house of cards under the weight of reality. In her eyes, previously filled with venomous mockery, now swirled genuine astonishment, bordering on panic. She, accustomed to being the center of attention, to shining and dominating, suddenly found herself in the shadows, eclipsed not only by Natalia's success, but also by her own insignificance, revealed in comparison. Maxim, as if waking from a long sleep, looked at Oleg with a strange mixture of recognition and horror. He recognized in him the very Oleg Petrov whose signature he had desperately tried to obtain for an investment agreement, the very one whose name was a mantra in their office, a symbol of success and prosperity. And here stood Oleg Petrov, a successful doctor, philanthropist, and most terrifyingly, Natalia's husband, exuding calm and confidence. Maxim felt the ground disappear beneath him. All his carefully constructed plans, his hopes for business salvation, his future crumbled to dust. He suddenly grasped the depth of his mistake made years ago when he traded love for the illusion of wealth, and the price of that mistake proved to be immeasurable. Natalia felt no malice. There was no anger or triumph in her eyes. She simply held Oleg's hand, feeling his warmth and support. At that moment, only one thing mattered to her: saying goodbye to her father, paying him tribute and love. Everything else seemed small and insignificant. Inga stood in the shadows, crushed and bewildered. For the first time in her life, she didn't know what to say or do. Her usual methods of manipulation and intrigue were ineffective. Natalia was no longer the naive girl who could be easily deceived and humiliated. She had become a strong, independent woman who didn't need Inga's approval or recognition. Inga felt small and helpless, like a cornered animal. She suddenly realized that all these years she had chased a phantom, someone else's happiness, instead of building her own. And this phantom had finally turned its true face to her, the face of emptiness and disappointment. Maxim, head bowed, stood silently beside Inga. He felt hollow and guilty. He understood that he had ruined not only Natalia's life, but his own as well. He had exchanged sincere love for false glitter, and now he had to pay the price. He saw how Inga lost her confidence and strength with every passing minute, and he felt sorry for her. But he understood that he was to blame for her becoming who she had become. He indulged her whims, allowed her to manipulate him, and in the end, they both found themselves trapped in a cage they had built themselves. After the farewell ceremony concluded, Natalia and Oleg approached Inga and Maxim. Natalia looked at Inga with sadness and sympathy. "I'm sorry things turned out this way," she said softly. "I wish you no ill will, Inga. I just want you to be happy." Inga remained silent, her eyes downcast. She didn't know what to say. She felt ashamed and hurt. "Goodbye, Natasha," she finally whispered. Natalia nodded and turned to Maxim. "Maxim, I hope you can find your place in life. Don't live in the past. Look to the future." Maxim raised his head and looked at Natalia with gratitude. "Thank you, Natasha," he said. "I'll try." Natalia and Oleg left, leaving Inga and Maxim alone. They stood in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Silence reigned, broken only by the soft rustling of leaves in the trees. As Natalia and Oleg walked out of the cemetery gates, Natalia felt a great burden lift from her shoulders. She could finally let go of the past and move forward. She knew that a happy future awaited her with Oleg, a future filled with love, joy, and purpose. "Are you okay?" Oleg asked, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Yes," Natalia replied, smiling. "I feel wonderful." They got into the car and drove to the airport. Natalia looked out the window at the passing landscapes, reflecting on how her life had changed over the past few years. She had endured pain and betrayal, but had found the strength to forgive and move on. She realized that true happiness lies not in wealth and power, but in love, friendship, and the ability to help others. On the plane, Natalia dozed off, Leaning against Oleg's shoulder, she dreamt of her father, smiling and waving to her. She knew he would always be with her in her heart. Upon returning home, Natalia threw herself back into her work. She pursued her patients' treatment with even greater enthusiasm, striving to alleviate their suffering and offer them hope for recovery. She felt that her work was her calling, her way of making the world a little better. A few months later, Natalia learned that Inga and Maxim had divorced. Maxim's business had collapsed, leaving him with nothing. Inga had left the city and never reappeared. Natalia didn't know what had become of her, but hoped she had found her happiness. Natalia and Oleg continued to live happily. They traveled together, engaged in charitable activities, and simply enjoyed life. They were grateful to fate for bringing them together and strived to make each other happy every day. Natalia looked out the window at the sunset, painting the sky in vibrant colors. She felt at peace and content. She knew more trials awaited her, but she was ready for them. She was a strong, independent woman who had found her happiness in love, friendship, and the opportunity to help others. And this was her silent victory. A victory over the past, over grievances, and over herself. A victory that allowed her to become who she had always dreamed of being.